Pops in a pod. Pops in a pod.
Hey everyone, Nadir Pop here.
And Peter Pop.
Peter, I think long awaited episode, this one that we're recording. It's been something that we weren't sure would happen at all. I mean, considering the situation that we found ourselves in with the whole pandemic and the lockdown, but here we are, and the topic of today is back to school. Tell me, how happy are you about this situation?
Yeah, man. I mean, I'm glad you said long awaited because when we discussed what is to look forward to in 2020, I think we debated whether we would put, our kids going back to school and then kind of left it out, right? Because we weren't sure what was going to happen in there. But yeah, I'm happy, man. I mean, there's so much that we can talk about our kids going back to school, especially since in the last 6 months, my son finally attended like a formal school in person again, right? So, milestone, I guess, for my son.
Yeah, and this situation is very different. I mean, I think the first time in its history, right, of schooling, where whole new generations have experienced school, but they've never really been to a physical school, right? So there are so many firsts for this new generation in terms of experiencing schooling, right?
Yeah, and for those of you who've been following us for a while, will remember that we actually did an episode on online school and what it was like, and that was interesting, right? Just to hear from another parent's perspective. Well, now that you were experiencing it, I was still enjoying not having to deal with that. But now we're talking about the total opposite end, where our kids are actually attending school.
No, absolutely. In fact, I remember when we was sort of accepting the fact that, okay, you know what, I think the school is going to start. We started reading so much information, right? That, okay, what is the government going to declare? Are they going to declare certain things? What is it that we kind of need to look forward to? So we'll sort of deep dive into all of this, but for the sake of our listeners, Peter, why don't you tell us how have we planned this episode?
So the way we're breaking this episode is into three parts, right? One is what were our thoughts before our kids went to school. The second, when they actually went to school, what it was like, and finally now what it's like, right? Because at least in my instance, my son has been on and off going to school for about 6 months now, so it's very different. And I think that's the good contrast that both of us have in our kids going to school in that experience.
Well, that's perfect, Peter. So let's start with the first section, thoughts before our children going to school. So, Peter, any opening comments for you, considering that your son actually did start going to schools sort of on and off?
Yeah, so just to like put some context, right? In October, my son started school, and this was just after the whole Diwali vacation. And considering this was, he's still in the lower KG, they had to kind of ease them in. And especially since it's so different from online school, right? I mean, online school, I think the less said, the better. But with him, we had to literally, like, they spent an hour and a half. In certain kids' instance, especially my son, we were there during that time just to kind of ease them in. But just the gradual change over a month or a couple of months that I saw in him, right? And just the kind of friendship that he made, the whole thing that he went through, it just amazes me when I look back at it. Because initially, more than him, I think I was anxious and my wife was anxious as to how this entire thing is going to play out, right? Because when he was really young, we put him in daycare, play school, and we saw that happen. But this was completely different, right? Now, this is a proper routine that we're kind of doing with him. So yeah, I think more than him, it was us who was worried. That's what I would say.
No, I'll have to take you up on that, Peter. I think anxiety was definitely something um, that my wife, and my parents also experienced, but it was sort of bittersweet for all of us as a family, because you know how it is that 2 years, uh, our daughter was sitting at home, and you could see every second of her life while she was attending school, or at least 1.5 years of her schooling life. And somewhere, as parents, we were happy, the fact that okay, finally she will now go to a physical school. But at the same time, I don't know, I can't speak on behalf of my wife, but I was definitely thinking that there'll be a void when she goes away. But in my head, I'm thinking, hey, if schools are starting, obviously even work will start, and we'll have to
Yeah.
physically go to office as well, which eventually obviously did ended up happening. So yeah, so anxiety was definitely there, especially as kids, like how will they react to teachers, how will they react to other students, will they be excited, will there be a lot of crying on day one. We just didn't know, right? Like everything was so new for all of us. So yeah, I think anxiety, anxiousness, that's something that definitely was very much part of our emotional range before kind of school sort of started off. But for me, I think another thing that really did concern me, and again, Peter, this is somewhere you can also help us out in terms of understanding from a health standpoint, because considering our kids haven't been out for so long, and then suddenly they have to go to school, they'll be interacting with so many people. There's always this thing at the back of our heads, right, that immunity is low, they'll probably fall sick, whether it's COVID or not, because they are the only ones who are not really vaccinated, right? I mean, your 5-year old and your 6-year old preschoolers. So that was also something that was playing on my mind. I mean, did you have similar thoughts running through your head when it came to health?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, you're saying that, and it just reminds me that there was a time just before that I would notice, like on days that my son would do online school, he would actually take his nap in the afternoon, because prior to that he had I thought he had just kind of dropped that afternoon nap that he used to take. And the more he was getting, like, engaged and involved, and just I'm talking like online school itself, he started like taking that nap for an hour or so during the day. And boy, once actual physical school started, I would actually see him tired. Like, you would come back, you would be zapped, and I was like, wow, so this is what it's actually like, right, to kind of deal with. And I'm going to hold off on actually what it was like for my wife and me, because luckily both of us are still working from home. So I'm going to hold off on that. But yeah, that's a whole, I think, different ball game, right? Like how parents have to deal with physical
Yeah,
school,
which
right?
is something that we will talk in our second section. But you're right, absolutely. Even the whole fatigue aspect, right, for kids, because I mean they are children. So uh, again, we also don't know, uh, after spending a couple of hours outside the house, from a schooling standpoint, like we were also constantly considering this, that will they be too tired, will they be able to manage, will they have the stamina. So I think that was also something that was sort of running through our heads, and we were also constantly second guessing that how will it be, is it going to be manageable, since in case of my daughter, she dropped her afternoon nap way back, right? And she hates sleeping in the afternoon. So in our minds, we were like, okay, if she's going to spend so many hours in school, what's the next step? Will she come back and should we just put her to sleep, or will she want to eat first, and what's going to happen, right? There's so many things running in your head. So yeah, that was definitely one thing that was kind of there. But I think for me it was also more logistical, because no signs of buses, right? So the government just said that okay, we are schools will start in the state of Maharashtra, but no buses. So again, as a family, we were thinking, oh my god, how are we going to drop her? Who's going to drop her? Who's going to pick her up? What time will they go pick her up? Are we going to use public transport? Are we going to use our own vehicle? What if office starts? Should we inform the office beforehand that listen, I might be coming in a little late. I'll have to leave early to go pick up my daughter. Like, there's so many things, running in my head. Of course, the whole dreaded waking up early in the morning, and it was just questions and questions and questions.
Listen, I was lucky. I have to give full credit to my son's school. They were very generous that way. Like initially, they started at the luxurious late hour of 10 a.m. I don't think anyone has started school that late, but I think it was more for the kids than the parents. But I think all parents took advantage of that. But then they slowly kind of eased it, like started half an hour earlier, and now they start at 9 a.m. Just to talk about like what you were saying, right? In terms of the fatigue, also the way they kind of increase the time of the school from 1.5 hour to 2 hours, then in 3 hours, that gradually helped the students kind of adjust, right, to just the various aspects, and also got them to introduce different aspects of schooling to the children. But similarly, while they started at 10 o'clock, it all the way slowly went to 9:30 and then 10. And yeah, logistics was a problem. I mean, I remember when my son was starting school at 10, I would have this daily office call at 10:30. So I knew that, if I don't drop it, if I drop him in 5-10 minutes late, that means I'll start my call, or I'll be able to join the call late, right? So it's that fine line that you have between, you know your work responsibilities and responsibilities at home. So just kind of managing that. And like initially, I think that's the thing, right? Like when you are not used to it, you're just like anxious and worried. But few weeks into it, once you build that routine and keep doing it, now like I can't even imagine that we wake up and get ready and he's in school by 9 a.m., right? Which is something I couldn't have thought of uh, initially. So did you have a similar experience?
I think it's all about habit, because when you were just talking about the whole aspect of the school very systematically uh, pushing the time back to normal school time. I remember when I first received the mail from the school. I think it was the towards the end of Jan, 21st or something, where they had given us a good 6 odd days to prep everyone up and tell everyone that okay, school is starting on the 27th of Jan. School is starting, and I was like, oh my god, it's finally happening! Wow, everything's is happening. And okay, how are we going to do this? What are we going to do? How are we going to prepare her food, her tiffin, her books, her blah blah blah, all of that. And it just, and then I was like, okay, this is a good 2-pager document. Let me just kind of read through it. And that's when I saw the time. So her online school would start at 10:25 and go on till about 12:30, 12:40 max, right? Now suddenly her school um, would start at 8:45. And in my head I'm like, okay, so that's not all that bad, because I'm an early riser, right? So it's like it's okay. So this we kind of figured it out that okay, chalo, now I know what we sort of need to do. But yeah, these were the thoughts before you know our kids kind of started going to school. So Peter, moving on to the next section, which is when they actually went to school. You want to start this off?
Man, it was hell. Let's be honest, right? I'm not gonna like sugarcoat this part. And it was tough because, first of all, these are people who my son has only seen online and never met in person. And again, for context, other than my wife and me, my son has not spent any time with anyone else, even like a day. for the last 2 years. So obviously it's not going to be easy, right? And then these are literally strangers, people he doesn't know, doesn't want to be apart from his parents. So initial days we actually sat in class. I mean, uh, there are times I've actually done office meetings while sitting in his classroom on the other side and just been on mute half the time. But I realized, if that's what it takes, then we got to do it. And it was hard. I mean, like, it- again, I would have felt horrible if it was only him, but then I saw there were other parents also who were there, just kind of reinstating for him that, hey, we're around, we're not just kind of like leaving you. And in my experience, what happened with the play school, I think it took him about 2 weeks to make that adjustment. So I was mentally prepared that, for a couple of weeks this is going to happen. Then, they started kind of getting him into the routine, showing him the toys, and kind of distracting his mind, right? So just getting him engaged with different things, because otherwise his focus is only that, oh my God, where are my parents? My parents are gone. And that just doesn't create a great environment for everyone, right? Not just us alone, for also the teachers. It kind of puts them off, and makes them uncomfortable. The other kids themselves, I mean, all you need is one kid crying and throwing a tantrum, and then you have half the class that way. But all credit to his teachers. I mean, because luckily his class is a small class, it's about 6 students. So it was still manageable, right? I mean, in my head, I was like, oh my God, if he had like 10 or 20 students, it would have been much, much harder. What about you, Nadir? What was your experience like?
Luckily, um, with the whole anxiety and everything, it wasn't all that bad. In fact, we were very thrilled and we were very happy. I remember the first day when we had to get our daughter ready, and she was so excited that finally she's getting to get out of the house, and she'll go to school, she's going to meet her teachers and these kids who she's only seen virtually. So we were also sort of excited for her because we wanted to really understand how she's going to experience all of this, right? Because it's such a brand new experience for her as well. And honestly speaking, we were happy that she's actually now um, at an age where she's mature enough to understand certain things, right? So in a way, we were quite happy with the fact that, okay, great age, she's excited, we don't have to really convince her, we don't have to really push her. It's all happening very naturally, and she's a very social kid in any case, so she really does crave company. So I think it sort of worked out pretty well for us. The whole logistic thing also worked out pretty well. It was my duty to drop her every morning to school, and then head to office, because by then offices had started off more or less. And then in the evenings my dad or my mum would go and pick her up. So that worked out quite nicely. um, the whole reintegration process also was working out, and as you said, Peter, due credit to the teachers for managing this situation, because it's not easy for anyone to shift from this whole online school model and then suddenly trying to take things back to normal. In fact, I remember very clearly that in a class of about say 15 odd students, you still had a good 5 6 students who had opted to study from home, so they still wanted to do online schooling for various reasons, because a lot of these kids were still not in the city. A lot of the kids were not very comfortable, the parents were not very comfortable sending their kids over, despite the fact that they were all vaccinated, as in the parents and everyone at home were vaccinated and everything. They were just, I think it does take some time to reach that comfort level where you are comfortable sending your child to school. So we also notice a lot of those things. But all in all, I think it was a great experience. My daughter got to meet her classmates. She would come and sort of tell us the entire routine, and it just worked out very well. And I think the most interesting thing that she loved talking about is the tiffin box. who got what in their tiffin box. Yeah, it was just amazing. It was a drama. We were all waiting for, okay, what has, baby K got in his box, or what has baby B got in her box. And they were all, it just be like this really cool drama that was happening. Oh, you know what, he got marshmallows and the other one got Oreo cookies, but I was having my grapes and orange. And I was like, yeah, sure, I'm sure you were having your grapes and orange. And then it's like, no, actually I had one Oreo cookie I also had. And I was like, there you go. Now we know what you're doing in school. So yeah, I mean, it was kind of fun.
Yeah, true. I mean, I think, see, that's the thing, right? Like, while we are focused all about like the academics and, oh, what did you learn and things like that, it's stuff like what did they play, what did they eat. That is more the focus of their thing, right? And just them developing their friendship and making friends. Because like after those initial 2 weeks, and that's what I felt, that it came also at a right time, because and it was also done in a right way, I may add, where my son was slowly eased into school. By the end of the year in December, he was fine. But then, he fell sick. We started hearing about cases of COVID rising again. And then, boom, Omicron happened in Jan, right? So, literally, there was again a break where they moved online. And that's the thing, like you were talking about certain students still doing online, right? Like, I've realized kids are still figuring out their routine, right? And it's how easy you make it for them. My son, I've realized, online can only kind of have an attention span of an hour or so, right? So it's how do you keep making it interesting for him? And when for the second time when they went online, I was like, oh my god, like now what's going to happen, right? But luckily, since then, so I'd say like the last week of Jan to now, when we're recording, which is the 26th of March, schools have been offline again, right? And I think it's been a lot easier the second time around. It's just, reminding him about all the other stuff. So I used to keep saying to him, right, like, oh, we're going to school, you're going to have fun. And sometimes he would be like, no, I don't want to have fun today. And I'd be like, wow, like he's associating school as a bad thing, or fun as not a good thing, right?
Which is, but which is so typical of children, right? You they understand certain routines can get a little boring, and even they need a break, right? So in our case, I think for us it was the fact that, oh, empty house, we were so used to having a child running around and 24/7, right? And now suddenly it just got into this space that, it's feeling weird that you don't hear screaming and shouting in the house, and it's so quiet for like 4 hours and everyone can hear their thoughts. So I think it works out pretty well. So
In your case, it was empty house. In my case, my office colleagues were so used to my son jumping into the Zoom calls, right, or making an appearance, that when he started going to school, they're like, hey, where's your son? We haven't seen him in a while.
so you can only imagine the kind of presence, I mean, what a solid presence they have, in the house. So I think the school has done a huge favor by taking these kids away from us, and like, oh, finally now it's not like 50-50. Now the entire onus of the child is on the school for those many years, and we are happy to outsource it like after 2 years. So yeah, I mean, I'm truly, I feel blessed that, okay, thank God things are slowly getting back to normal. The fact that the schools have started just makes me feel that, okay, I think now things are back to what they were 2 years ago, and it's just something to sort of look forward to. And um, with that in mind, Peter, our third section, which is now, what's happening right now. I mean, I think both our children have experienced school for a good, 2.5, almost 3 months now. Well, 2 months, yeah. Let's stick to your son, maybe slightly longer. What's your assessment of the current situation?
So it's funny, right? And like I started doing this thing on Instagram where I started documenting some of the stuff he says. Like he came up with like the funniest stuff to avoid going to school, right? So outside his school, there's a signboard which says no honking. And he'd be like, Daddy, see what that sign says. So I was like, what does it say? He's like, no school today. We have to go back. And all this kind of funny stuff he would keep coming with. So I had to like kind of document it. And then one day he said something like, no school today. Today is holiday. So I was like, who told you that? And he just was like, kept saying that while we were entering school. But it's been good. I mean, the thing is, what they've also started doing is a lot of stuff like PT, physical education, and things like that, which I realize my son really enjoys. And I think a great example of it was just the sports day that the school had, right? Which was really fun. I mean, I think it was a lot different from what I remember from our school days. I mean, I don't remember the early days, like how young my son was. But the major thing I saw that was different was they weren't competing with each other. Like there was no races that who is the fastest, who's the best, and things like that. The whole idea was just to encourage each child, and every child was a winner. So everyone got like a prize, and I thought that was really cool. So different, and I really like told the teachers afterwards that it's so nice that they're doing that, right? Because our kids will spend the rest of their lives competing, and I think that's something that should be only introduced to them much later. But I think that was a lot of fun to attend also as a parent, right? That was the first time I attended a sports day as a parent, so that was really cool. And yeah, they're doing a lot of fun stuff in school. Like luckily the school where he is, they also have like these plants and stuff like that, so they take them on these nature trails, show them different plants and things like that. So I think that's something that I'm really happy about. How are things at your daughter's school?
Right up front, I want to talk about the buses, the school buses finally starting. And like when that second mail hit that, oh, the government has now, opened up school buses as well. And we were like, oh, thank God, because this whole dropping and picking up, I mean, it was fine, but I think the timing was just perfect, right? um, the weather was getting warmer and warmer, and I just realized that, okay, for my daughter it could get a little uncomfortable, sometimes on a two-wheeler or sometimes in a four-wheeler. So we just realized that if this whole process can be standardized and the school buses can start, I'm sure even she'll get used to it. And thankfully it just happened. Her school bus started just about 3 weeks ago. And yeah, it's great because that's another responsibility less from our end. The only thing that we have to do is, which is again my duty, where I have to go down and just wait for the bus to come to the gate. The bus picks her up and drops her exactly there. So uh, you know less effort again. So that was a big development for us. But the only issue initially, for us at least, was the fact that she would spend anywhere between 60 to 90 minutes one way in the bus. And that was a little, we were not very comfortable with that, and with the heat coming in. And we were just like, how do we sort of go over? So we did address it to the school authorities, and they said that, listen, even these buses are plying after 2 years. They're also trying to get used to so many things, plus there's so much construction in the city, roads are closed off, so they're all trying to figure out the best, an optimum route, so that the kids are comfortable and they also reach on time. So it took a while. It took a good week, 10 days, almost 2 weeks to figure out the route. But eventually, they figured it out. And now I think on an average it takes about 45 to 50 minutes one way. So which is I mean, yeah, sure, why not? Because yeah, it's a bus. Ultimately, it has to stop multiple places, but she enjoys it, you know. And the cool thing is that they also give you a tracker for the bus. I mean, new age schooling. What do you say, right? So you can now track the bus, and the bus cannot go beyond a certain speed limit, and you know exactly where the bus. Yeah, it's very cool. It's
Wow. What's next? Uber for school kids. So like you get them on the
Yeah, I mean, I
nearest
think
bus or
that's
whatever.
exactly what it is. The only difference is that instead of paying per ride, you're paying every month for the service. I think it's a great service. Currently, from what our assessment is that there are very few students who've opted for the bus, but I think eventually that number will go up. And yeah, she enjoys it because she has a bus friend, and then that same uh, girl is also in her class, so she spends a lot of time with that one kid, and obviously many other children at school also. So again, I think it's now finally the routine has set in. It's all sort of coming together, and yeah, that's it. I think I hope there's no looking back, Peter. Honestly, if there's another lockdown that comes, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I just hope this whole normalcy is here to stay.
Yeah, I mean, like I agree with you. With my son, they don't have a bus in there, so that's where my wife and I literally have to sometimes play tag and plan in advance, right? So, say if I have a meeting at 12 when my son school ends, then she has to go pick up, and you have to give advance notice and things like that. And like it's tough, right? Because my son's school, everyone either comes by a cab or gets dropped off by a car. So there's a pile up of cars outside all at the same time. And yeah, hats off to the school for kind of effectively managing it. I mean, there's no like chaos, but you know, when you go from like not having to deal with any kind of cars or transport at all to now having to deal with it, it's a bit of an adjustment, right?
No, absolutely. I think that adjustment period, we've seen enough and more, and I think now we've reached a stage where we understand. Okay, this is how it's going to be, and we are more or less comfortable. And I think the kids also enjoying it, and we don't see any problems for sure. But before we close this episode, Peter, I just wanted to ask you also that did you get an opportunity to meet your son's teachers when the school opened up, and if you did, what was that experience like?
Oh yeah, I mean, like one of the good things about like picking and dropping off my son is I get to interact with the teachers often, right? So like if there's something that's being done, like so say for example I was talking about the sports day and I was like wondering how he's going to get used to that, right? Because there were multiple children and multiple classes and stuff like that, and they kept telling me like, you know what, don't worry, everything will be fine, he's doing well. So it kind of made me feel a little confident also and less anxious about him in there, similar with his school progress work, right? Like week on week or so that I'd kind of know what he's doing and like where he needs improvements and stuff like that. I think one of the things with online school kids have struggled with is handwriting because they just don't practice that much, right? As they would have if they were in school. So yeah, and then once they had like a parent teacher meeting which I went to, where literally I could see, and they actually showed me some of his work over the months, right, where I could see the progress that he had made. And I think that's cool because it's important, right, especially at this age, to just kind of keep track of him. I mean, like I know you have the bus tracker, but like I wish there was like an actual tracker as an app where you could kind of see and document the kind of stuff. Because what I realize is there's so much being done in school but is not really highlighted because it just becomes part of the routine, right? But if you like take a step back and look at the progress made over the months and all, it actually, you're amazed, right? Like just how your children kind of learn and pick up all these concepts in there. I mean, I'm sure, have you had a parent teacher meeting, and what have you noticed? Anything similar?
Honestly, great timing considering we are recording this episode right now. Um, Today being the 26th of March, today was the day where we had a proper parent teacher association, the PTA meeting, and we went in the morning, in the afternoon actually, and we met all the teachers, the junior school coordinator. We met a lot of parents, a lot of kids we saw, and it just felt nice. It just felt okay. This is great. And similar feedback. When you spoke about the whole handwriting thing, so all parents get 10-minute slots, right? So my wife and I were very prepared exactly what we had to ask and what we listen and we'll come back. And yeah, that was the one negative feedback, or whatever, one feedback that we received from the teachers, is that my daughter's handwriting is, they obviously put it very nicely and mildly, but what they were essentially trying to say is that your daughter's handwriting is horrible, it sucks, you better get going and improve her handwriting, otherwise it's going to get very tough in the later grades. But otherwise they're very happy with the fact that she's interacting with other children, and she's extremely social, and basically all the things that you want to hear about your child. And I think that felt nice. That was a great experience, where both my wife and I went and met her class teachers, and they had some lovely things to say. They showed us a lot of her work, things that were hung on the wall, and it was fun. It was something that we were really really looking forward to. But there was this one very interesting case that we did come across when we went to the school, is that we noticed a couple who we had seen in the last year and a half, and their daughter in online school. And I wasn't there. I think my wife was speaking to them, and they just sort of started talking. In the conversation we found out that they are actually getting their daughter to repeat junior KG, and we were just a little stumped, and we were like, why would you, not that we ask them directly. I just thought it would be rude to ask them directly, but we were just discussing, my wife and I, that why would they want their daughter to repeat junior KG again, all over again. And we just figured that maybe it's because physical school is finally starting, and they just want their daughter to experience school from the lowest grade, like a proper school. So yeah, that was one thing that really did strike us as odd. But yeah, I mean, to each their own. If that's what they think that needs to be done, then yeah, good for them.
And I think, now that schools are back in person, right, that's something that we're going to be talking about a lot more this year. Especially, I mean, come on, let's be honest, Nadir. Education is one of our favorite topics here on the podcast, and we've done quite a few episodes. So this is not the last you've heard about education, and especially our kids.
Most definitely, Peter. I think education, there's so many things that we haven't even maybe scratched the surface. Hopefully, now we will. Now that school has started and there's so many things to look forward to, a whole new set of milestones will open up for us, which we'll be chasing, and our kids will also be chasing. So, yeah, there's so many things to look forward to, honestly, and I'm very excited.
Yeah, man, definitely. But you know what? That's all we've got planned for this episode. As always, we'd love to hear from you and hear your experiences. So, if you've had your children go to school for the first time in the last few months or this year, let us know what their experience has been like. Like, you can drop us an email at popsinapod@gmail.com.
Or you can just search for Pops in a Pod on Facebook or Instagram, and we put up some really interesting content, call outs to our next episode. uh, yeah, please feel free to like our stuff, comment on it, share, or even tag somebody who you think is interesting, and we might just get that somebody on the podcast as our potential guest. But in the meantime, I hope you had fun, and we look forward to see you guys next week.
All right, see you guys then.